This webinar is made possible through the Specialty Crop Block Grant given by the Texas Department of Agriculture to the Sustainable Food Center in Austin, Texas. The Sustainable Food Center has partnered with the National Center for Appropriate Technology in San Antonio, Texas, and Foodshed investors in Austin, Texas, to help farmers become more wholesale ready.
So thank you everybody for joining us for the last Texas Wholesale Readiness webinar series with Ellen Polishuk. Today we're going to be discussing equipment and infrastructure upgrading and when will it pay off. So we've got a great return on investment tool that we're going to show y'all how to use today for evaluating buying new equipment and looking at how the labor can change and how many years it will take to pay that off, and the cost per year, basically. So I'm going to start us out with our first poll. And so before we get started with Ellen, because this is a good way for Ellen to kind of move us forward, have any of you done a cost analysis for buying new equipment for any business? It doesn't have to be an ag business, but simply any business in general. We have 5 people who say yes and 4 people say no. And currently we have 14 people on the call. So Ellen, I'm going to hand it over to you. I'll let you introduce yourself. I know there's a few people on here who haven't been on here before, Ellen. So if you want to give a brief introduction, that would be great.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Ellen Polishuk. I live outside of Washington, D.C. in the Maryland suburbs. I spent the majority of my life farming at Potomac Vegetable Farms in Virginia, just a few miles away from here. And there I grew organic vegetables, a little bit of cut flowers and herbs, tilled 20 acres, and sold it all through farmers market, CSA, and roadside stand. No wholesale. So who am I to talk about wholesale readiness? Anyway, and during that time, while I was still farming, I started doing some little bit of soils consulting with farmers and a lot of teaching, doing workshops at the beginning through the Southern SOG group at their conferences and then other conferences around the country. And worked with Southern SOG on bringing a tool called the Veggie Compass all around the South to different states. We didn't hit every single one, but we got around pretty good in about 7 years. And then in 2017, I retired from farming and started my full-time consulting work. So that's what I do now all day long, is work some individually with farms around the country, and then doing programs like this with nonprofit partners doing teaching and training around the country. I'm going to get us started. Why do we buy equipment? And I have this split up into this page, which is the reasons that we can put data around, quantifiable reasons. We do buy equipment or invest in infrastructure so that we can reduce the cost of producing, harvesting, or packing. And through that investment, we hope to reduce labor cost. That's a big reason why we buy equipment or put in improve infrastructure, and to reduce the cost of maintenance. And again, this is assuming that new things work better than old things, which is not always borne out in reality, but often that's the case. We also buy equipment so that we can increase our sales, so that we can increase production, so we can grow more and sell more. Sometimes that may have us with the same cost of production, and sometimes in a perfect world, in a better world, this improvement will actually reduce the cost to grow any one unit of vegetable. Sometimes we buy equipment for another reason, which would be to increase the quality of the product that we're selling and consistency of quality throughout the season. So that may be, examples of that may be a greens harvester instead of cutting by hand. It could mean a wash line that's gonna have a better, more consistent looking product at the end. It could be a root digger machine, which is going to make sure we don't scar up some of the roots using hand tools. Another example could be a better cooler, a bigger, better cooler that maintains temperature more regularly. That would increase our quality. And then the last reason sometimes that people buy things is because their accountants tell them to go spend money at the end of the year so they don't have to, pay taxes. And this is a silly, silly reason to buy something. That's my opinion. It's fun to have a profit. What other kinds of reasons might there be? And I would call them subjective reasons. So we want to make the work easier on our bodies and more comfortable. That can be something that, certainly could save us money over time, but it's a very difficult equation to come up with. We don't have a way to figure that out usually. We may want some equipment or infrastructure to get us ready for the next step in the growth of the farm business. If your goal is to scale up, which is something we've been talking about a lot in this group, then you got to start somewhere with pushing your whole series of equipment and infrastructure to the place where you be able to grow more product. So you can't usually buy it all at once. You may have to stage your growth and to buy some things now, some next year, and some in year 3 in order to get your whole new program organized. And then, of course, the most important reason is we buy things because we want to. And that is a real reason. I'm not gonna pretend otherwise. And so what we're gonna do here is to try to have you see if you can substantiate your want with some good numbers. All right, so then of course the question is it always financially beneficial to invest in equipment or infrastructure? So what we're going to use today is we're going to look at a couple different tools. They can go by lots of different names. You could call them cost benefit analysis tools. It could also be called a partial budget analysis. These tools allow you to put numbers around the thing that you want to buy, the new purchase, and compare it to what would happen if you didn't buy it, the status quo, the way it is now. Let's take a look at what we're going to do here. These forms, these little tools we have are really simple, very easy to understand, and they can be used for all kinds of things. You could compare selling in one market channel versus another. You could compare the cost of buying transplants from another operation, comparing it to raising them yourself and the costs associated with greenhouse and growing. You could compare transplanting a crop versus direct seeding the crop. You could compare buying land versus renting land. But I just want you to know that this same kind of thinking, this analysis, can be applied to lots of different things. So this is the first tool we're going to spend quite a little bit of time with. This one, as you can see here at the top, comes out of the Center for Integrated Agricultural Systems at the University of Wisconsin. It was inspired by a tool that came out of Farm Credit, Gary Madison at Farm Credit, and then my buddy here at University of Wisconsin, John Hendrickson, took that tool and kind of gussied it up. And I'm going to just talk through some of these major areas, and then we're going to go through 2 complete examples of, we're going to work with Michelle here, who's on the call. She's going to talk to us about a barrel washer possibility for her operation. And then I'm going to run an example of buying a water wheel transplanter compared to planting by hand. So the first thing that comes, the first step in blue here, is to calculate the depreciation cost of that piece of equipment or improvement. This means we're going to spread out the purchase over the years of useful life of whatever it is. So we're going to fill in line A, what is the cost? Line B is what is the salvage value of that equipment or infrastructure? Meaning if it's all busted and worn out, what could you sell it for scrap? In some cases, this could be really truly just the sort of the scrap value of the metal. In other cases, like let's say you wanted to buy an Allis-Chalmers G cultivating tractor. Well, the dang thing is already 65 years old when you're buying it, new. And if you used it for 10 years, I imagine you could sell it for pretty much exactly what you bought it for. And then
Just a
yeah.
minute, this is Robert. Can I interrupt for just a quick second?
Yes, please.
On line 6, let's be careful to make sure that total cost of equipment is not when you go to the web page and see on there that a piece of equipment costs $3,000. How much is it going to cost to ship that thing to your farm? Make sure when you put a number in that line, you think of total delivered cost to your farm of the equipment.
Yep. And including all the bells and whistles that you think you're going to need. So then line 8 or C, as it is here, line C is how long is this improvement going to last? What's its useful life? And then through the power of math, we're going to come to the bottom. It's going to spread out then that final cost of the equipment minus the salvage value divided by how many years it lives. And it's going to, and that'll tell you how much you can charge the farm for the use of that tool or improvement over the useful life each year. That's what depreciation is. It's spreading out a cost over the time period that item is useful. All right, so that's step 1. Step 2 is getting into the budget. How is this improvement going to affect your farming operation? So as you can see, there's lots and lots of words here. Each of these lines has an explanation next to it. If you see one of these red triangles in the corner and you hover over it, it'll pop up a window that has even more words to explain because it didn't fit in one line. Same for here. So this has a lot of explanation to it. So the first part of step 2 is line 1, additional revenue. So will this improvement or investment or piece of equipment, will it actually make you more money? This is a good question. Can anybody think of an example of an improvement or a piece of equipment that would actually have a direct improvement or addition in revenue?
If you have a piece of equipment that allows you to treat your harvested product more gently so you don't lose so many in the culls, maybe you could have, you harvest 100 pounds, normally you have to reject 10 pounds, but with this new piece of equipment, you only have to reject 5 pounds. So you'll be selling more product at a higher price.
Not everything is going to have a number to put into this line 1, but that's a good example from Robert. So then we're going to, if you had an additional revenue that came as a result of the investment, then what you're going to do in line 2 is you're going to put in your gross margin. We talked slightly ad nauseum about gross margin in our last meeting, and here is the pop out. Gross margin is a company's total sales revenue minus cost of goods sold divided by that total sales revenue. Okay, so we're not going to spend any more time than that talking about gross revenue. If you don't know what your farm's gross margin is, then we're going to suggest that you use 40% as a gross margin. That's a healthy gross margin goal, a realistic gross margin goal for retail sales. If you are primarily a wholesale grower, you're used to a tighter, smaller gross margin, and then a number somewhere around 20 is probably a better gross margin for you to use there. So the point of this is we're going to multiply that additional revenue on line 1 by the gross margin percentage on line 2, and that's going to give us a dollar figure here on line 3 of actual money that we get to, that this piece of equipment or infrastructure is going to actually give us in the end. None of the examples we're using today mess around here in this gross margin area. So, but just know that it's there to be used if you need it. So then comes our depreciation cost that we had up here is going to get plugged in automatically onto this line 4. Then on line 5, if you are borrowing money in order to make this purchase, here's where you would put in your interest expense. This would be a yearly interest expense. And then now we get into the nitty gritty of what is this tool, in this case, what does it cost for you to have this tool and to use it? And how is it going to change production? And here's the coaching for each line here right next to it. So line 6, is this piece of equipment going to change your utility costs on the farm? If you're going from a 6x8 CoolBot to a 14x20 for reals walk-in cooler, trust me, you're going to be buying some more electricity. You're going to have to either research what that number is going to be or come up with an educated guess of some kind. None of the examples we're using today really would change the utilities, but it certainly is possible for other things. Then we come to line 7. This is kind of the juicy one, is labor. How is this improvement or purchase going to change your labor situation? So if you anticipate that you're going to have labor savings, you put in a negative number. If you think this equipment or improvement is going to increase your labor costs, then you put in a positive number. There's a whole other sheet down here on the bottom, another tab that comes with this tool for you to help you determine the labor change for this purchase. So I'm going to go there now. Everybody see estimating labor savings? But basically, here's the way you've been doing it, and then here's the new way you're going to do it. And here's all the things it's asking you to think about that where labor is involved in this process. We'll go through these examples and it'll all make way more sense. But what we're going for is this number right here in the yellow box. What is the net savings in labor? I can't even imagine what improvement you would make that would actually be a net labor increase, because saving labor is almost the main reason we make improvements most of the time. So I guess it's possible, but I haven't thought of an example of it. So that's what the labor sheet looks like. Again, we're going to go over this twice with real examples. I'm going to go back to the original sheet, and you would take that labor savings number and put it in here as a negative number. Then it's asking you, okay, is this improvement also, is it a piece of equipment that's attached to a tractor? Is this an implement? And it doesn't work by itself, it has to work with a tractor. So now, are you using a tractor when you weren't using a tractor before? And of course, using a tractor has a cost associated with it. So what is the cost? There's some resources down here for coming up with a number for how could you assign a cost of a tractor by the hour. In today's examples, I'm going to use the number $20 an hour is the cost of owning, maintaining, and putting gas and replacement costs all built in. I'm going to use that number $20 an hour today. That's pretty, it could be a little lower, could be a little higher. I think it's a good number for us. And then here would be lines of other things that you think are going to be new costs that you're taking on or savings that you're going to get from having this improvement. And then line 12 is the ta-da, what is the net income that's going to result from you having bought this and employed this new piece of equipment or infrastructure. So then the line 13 is how much of the equipment will I pay off or in 1 year, right? 1% up to 100% all in 1 year because of the cost savings that this thing is going to enable. And then the last line 14 is how long in years is it going to take for this equipment to have paid for itself through its usefulness and its cost savings. All right, so that's the empty, boring one. And now we're going to invite Michelle to come on and we're going to work together through this, an example that's for reals at her farm. All right, so Michelle, tell us about this. I put a picture here. Tell us what you're thinking about buying.
So we do grow a lot of root crops, and right now we're just spraying them off on a wire table that we made with hardware cloth. We've got 3 wire tables and a hose. And so what we've been thinking about investing in is a barrel washer for made for washing roots. We grow carrots, beets, turnips, potatoes, radishes, and we grow about 10,000 pounds of them every year. So the the time that it takes to wash those is fairly significant, and especially now with COVID, we haven't been able to have a lot of volunteers on the farm, and this is one project that a lot of times we would leave for volunteers, was spraying down the carrots and helping us wash those, because it was an easy thing for volunteers to do. So one of our limiting factors on getting these moved out to both our mobile markets and our wholesale customers is just getting them washed and bagged up and processed. So this barrel washer is, I know there's plans online where we could build our own, but this one, a farm in Ohio or Pennsylvania?
New York State.
Oh, New York. Somewhere east of here, they build these. And you can get them either like in a kit to put together, or you can get them just like assembled and shipped. So I think assembled, there's something a little over $3,000. So we're, we put that $4,000 as the cost to kind of, at Robert's suggestion as well, to just, kind of shoot high. Even if we might decide to actually get the kit and put together as a educational opportunity. But I feel like with these things, it's kind of nice to sort of aim high when you're estimating costs.
So as Michelle just told us, she's giving us a high estimate of what it'll cost to get that piece of equipment to her farm delivered of $4,000. Resale value, we're going to assume that in this case, there's not going to be anything left of this to sell after 10 years, which is line C. So you take 10 years, you take the $4,000 divided by 10 years, you get an annual depreciation cost of $400. Okay. Step 2, we're already on our way. Like we talked about in the last example, this barrel washer is not going to result in automatically additional revenue. So we have nothing to really add here in line 1. So it doesn't even matter about the gross margin because we're not basically employing any of these first 3 lines. So we come all the way to line 4. Here's the $400 right here. Michelle, do you need to borrow money to make this purchase?
As a nonprofit, we would be relying on grant funding to fund this.
Okay, so there is no cost to borrowing the money. Next, we get into, oh, look, I didn't even notice the $4. I love this. Okay, so there's an estimate. Go ahead.
Marissa, who's also on the line, is our assistant farm manager. And
Marissa, do you have anything you want to tell us?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I basically kind of estimated how much electricity it would draw per hour, and I kind of based it on how the website said it was from 120 volt. and I just thought 20 amps, and I did a bunch of math, basically, and also looked at just the Austin energy rates,
Uh-huh.
and just did math that way to determine, like, it costs 20 cents per hour to run this machine, and then I looked at how many hours a year we would run it, which is about 20 hours, and then that turned out to be $4 in the end.
Wow. Good for you. I'm impressed. That's wonderful. Okay, so $4 a year is an anticipated increase in utilities. So next we come to the labor piece. All right, so I'm going to click over here to the labor tool, the labor sheet. Michelle, will you talk us through these numbers that you have here for the old way versus the anticipation of the new way?
So, again, Marissa did all the work, so she's awesome. She went through and looked at all of our harvest records from the last year, and we harvest about 10,000 pounds of root crops. So that's where we don't think we'd actually be growing any more root crops because we're actually limited on space. So
Okay.
unless we could leave more land, that we're kind of maxed out there. And then the work rate, we figured out with how many pounds per hour we could wash. What we have 3 tables, that we spray tables. So we can put about 2 IFCOs full on each table, and which is about I think it was about 60 pounds is what we were guessing per table. So it's a little bit more probably than 200 pounds, 210, something like that we can wash in an hour. And that's limited by the space on the table. And then, usually we have to spray it down and then come and spray it down again and turn it all over and spray it down again. So it's pretty likely that that's going to take us an hour to be able to wash and then pack it all. And then with the root washer, the work rate goes up to 500, and really they say on their website that you can do 6 to 700 pounds an hour. So that might be a little bit low, but we're also thinking about weighing them and packing them and all of that within that time period.
And this would all be with one person instead of 2 people in the previous way.
Which when you look at the videos, they actually usually do have 2 people working that machine. So I don't know if it's feasible, but I think if you did have 2 people on there, you probably could do more because you'd have one person sort of catching them and weighing them and bagging them, and the other person loading them up.
Right.
I don't know how feasible it is to run back and forth actually, but so we could play with two crew size, but actually getting $600 or $700 to 700 pounds.
Yeah. And of course, this is a number that you're going to want to mess around with, because this is the whole point of this machine, is that it's a labor savings. So this is where the action is in the tool, is in this labor piece. So you may have noticed in the video, the guy was working by himself, but he also was doing all the spraying. The machine, the barrel washer, also comes with a spray wand inside.
Right.
So I never used a hose. With the thing has its own water sprayer. And so different things could come about that would make it faster or slower. So we've got that idea now. So this is the math then, is the hours for this task over the season. This is a 100-hour task in the old-fashioned way. In the new-fashioned way, based on this assumption, we've cut it significantly from 100 hours to 20 hours. I mean, basically that's the deal. The rest is just math, right? What is the cost here on this line? Total labor cost. So this is not just the wage that you pay. It includes whatever taxes and benefits, etc., are part of your package for having people on your farm. And $15 an hour is the rate that Michelle has chosen or knows of. So the direct labor cost, old school, is $1,500. The direct labor cost, new school, is $300. Yeah. So there we go. Basically, at the bottom line here, $1,200 in labor savings in the new plan, the new world. And so here it is right here. $1,200, negative $1,200. So there's your big cost savings. This is not a tractor pulled implement, so we don't have to deal with a tractor cost. And then here, you see this little purple in the corner here? I'm going to put my cursor over it, and there Michelle has left a love note, and it says $50 for maintenance cost, grease, belts, and repairs. Why am I saying this? Because it's really smart to leave yourself love notes so that you know what your assumptions were, okay? And it's really easy to do in Excel. You just right click on anywhere and you can come here and say, make a comment, and you can leave yourself a note. Okay, Michelle has put in $50 as annual maintenance fee, which I think is more than generous, plenty generous. And so then the rest of this math is going to come about. We get to line 12. Net income from using the barrel washer in 1 year is going to be a net increase of $746 of income. More math comes about in line 13, and that is that in 1 year you're going to pay off those that increase in income is going to pay 19% of the equipment. Another way to say the same thing is that here on line 14, it's going to take 5.5 years to pay off this $4,000 barrel washer purchase. What do you think about that, Michelle?
I think it's definitely promising.
Ellen, this is Robert. Could we do some
Yeah.
sensitivity analysis on changing some of the numbers and see what what the results are?
Yep. All right. So I just wanted to make sure we weren't behind. So let's do one quick one right here that I hadn't thought about before. Let's just say this sucker is going to last for 15 years. What did that do to our numbers? It means that now we're going to pay off the tool in 4.5 years. So it's getting paid off faster because it's going to last longer. Okay, so that was a simple change. I'm going to put it back. What would be a good number to change, Michelle?
I feel like some of the labor numbers is where I was like,
yeah, me too. All right, so let's go over here. And what do you think is another scenario that you'd like to imagine?
well, it'd be interesting to see if it did take 2 people to run it, but we could actually get 650 pounds per hour.
Okay, so now we have 2 people and we're flowing 650 pounds of carrots or roots. Oh, look at all those terrible decimal points. I'm so sorry. So now we have a labor savings of $1,038, whereas before we had a labor savings of $1,200. So it actually is not saving as much labor because, of course, you have 2 people doing it. And they didn't, and you didn't
just figure out how to use it, right, into the priorities of, because it might feel better in the moment to say, oh, I just watched it, we watched 650, but then to really think about and look at it, the numbers, and be like, okay, no, it's better just to leave one person to manage that, and even if they can't do as much in one go.
Yeah, I mean, and it could be something that you change your mind, depending on the weather and how many other things need to be happening. And does this become a coveted job or a hated job, right?
Right.
If it's a hated job, much better to have 2 people. Get her done faster, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's, I'm going to put these back to where they were a minute
Ellen,
ago.
can you use the base amount, and let's say you're going to wash twice as many pounds of roots. That's going to go to 20,000.
So let's pretend that you weren't land constrained and that you were growing 20,000 pounds of roots a year. And I have to change it in both examples so that it's a fair comparison. We put the the work rate and the crew size back to how you had them at the beginning. Now look at our labor savings. Here, $2,400 of labor savings. So if I bring that number over here and I say negative $2,400, check it out. It takes you 2 years to pay off that improvement. So that's a good one. That's a really good one to think about, Robert.
Yeah, and
Especially,
just for the other farmers, let's, to keep that number in context, 20,000 pounds of a root crop is about 1 acre.
and it could
So,
be some other root crops that are not as hard as carrots, right?
right.
Like
So
turnips or
this piece of
radishes.
equipment is a real, really something to consider for small farmers. If part of your mix is only about an acre of root crops for a given year, that's not a lot of production that you could save labor on and make this thing pay for itself.
And just to put this out to the group, the way that you determine how quickly the roots run through the washer is by changing the angle of the entrance and the exit. So if you want the roots, if they're not very dirty, right? Here's a factor we haven't talked about. How much dirt's on the roots? Is the dirt super dried on and caked, or is it fresh out of the field and it's going to come off easy? Those will all change. You can adjust the tilt of the washer. If you want them to run through fast, you make this taller, this end taller. This is the entrance. This is the exit over here. You make them run through quick because all they need is just a quick tumble and a quick spray and they're good to go. If they're really, really dirty, then it needs to be almost flat where they're spending quite a lot of turns of the barrel to get them clean by the time they pop out here on the end.
So we have pretty thick clay soil, so we probably don't want to be too steep. But so I can imagine it also depends on your soil texture too.
Yep, good point. And as I said to you before, if I made this bigger, you see this silver pole here, and then there's another pipe. This is a waterer. So like I said, when I used it, it has its own sprayer inside the barrel. So I didn't do any spraying. And so it is a self-spraying washer.
Can you put bunches with the greens in there, or is it only for bare roots?
It's only for topless roots.
Okay.
Although, on the interwebs, I was looking for that movie. I did see a photograph of somebody that had single carrots with their tops on. I don't think as a bunch you wouldn't be able to get, in between the carrots or the beets. And it's a really, really, really simple machine. I mean, it's just this motor and a chain, so there's not much to go wrong here, which is part of its selling feature.
So we've come up with a question for everybody to answer. So if you answered the poll that you do have some experience in doing a equipment tool, some equipment cost analysis, our question is, have you learned anything from doing an equipment cost analysis in the past from any type of business? And if so, would you like to share what you learned? Even when things aren't necessarily ag-related, you can still get a lot out of doing something like this that could be brought to the table here and help other people learn. So anybody want to speak up about their own experience?
Well, I'll comment. I answered yes, and what I had in mind was way back when I was farming, one of the first really expensive pieces of equipment we bought was, I guess, something that we're going to call a water wheel planter. There was almost like a little bitty Ferris wheel inside this big tumbler that would, it was a water wheel seeder this was the first seeder that we had ever seen in Texas that could actually plant seed in the ground at a specific spacing. And so when we first talked about buying it, we used some assumptions that, we thought, well, we could seed our ground twice as fast or 3 times faster, and it wouldn't take as many people. But it turned out, after a year of using it, we got so much better using it that our numbers really were so much more favorable that we were able to really justify buying it much quicker than we thought. And so if we had kind of stayed with the numbers that we originally used, it really was a marginal purchase. And then we kind of just went with that decision making criteria that Ellen talked about. We just wanted to buy it. I mean, it was the first mechanized planter anybody had ever seen in our neck of the woods in Central Texas back in 1980. And the reason I bring that up is we got so much better using it that the numbers really got better quicker within a year.
Well, I have some experience in the culinary world of a sausage grinder when we were making sausage. That was sausage, the sausage grinder, and then the mechanism that you put on the KitchenAid for, tubing the sausage out. I mean, when you have higher quality equipment that can hold more meat and that type of thing, then you can make more sausage. And it pretty much doubled production in the kitchen that I was working in. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is that, as Ellen mentioned, buying something just for tax write-off is not necessarily a good idea. However, you can write it off, and then you can also write off the depreciation costs too.
Yeah, that's a good point. The depreciation cost, even though it's not a cash expense, it is a legitimate expense on your balance, on your P&L for your farm. So don't think just because it's not a cash expense that it doesn't really count. It does count.
I mean, $400 a year in Michelle's case is, that's a significant amount.
Right, but you can't do both. You can't write off the $4,000 and the $400 a year. You got to pick one way or the other. Either you expense it all at once, a 179 depreciation, or you use, and they wouldn't let you put it over 10 years. They would probably make you put it over 7 or 5.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's getting into the nitty gritty of tax situations. But yes, this is a deductible expense.
So if you use it as a deductible expense in your first year, you can't deduct it after that? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying you can't double dip. So you can't write off the full cost of the equipment in year 1 and depreciate it. You have to depreciate it either all at once or over time. You can't do both.
So you have to be able to assume or estimate what depreciation will be over a 5-year period or 7-year period?
Well, so this is great to have you ask this question. So what we're doing here is our own internal analysis of how this piece of equipment is going to affect our lives in our business in real time. And so we're going on what we're going to consider the useful life of this equipment. And that is totally legit in our example, talking to ourselves. Now we're going to turn around, we're going to talk to the IRS. Well, they don't care what you think, how long that sucker's going to last. They got lists, they got rules. And this kind of equipment, I imagine, is going to be a 5-year deduction. They're going to tell you how long to say it's going to last. They don't care about reality. They're just going to put it in a category, right? So a 30-year depreciation expense is a barn. That's a 30-year expense. A barrel washer is going to be a 5-year expense, I imagine. So those are 2 different conversations, just like we've talked about in other webinars. There's conversations we have with ourselves about our own business, and then there's the conversation we have with the government. They're not the same. They're both important and valuable, but they're not exactly the same.
Got it. Thank you.
And
Great
I
question.
think that's where working with a CPA is, a good idea when you can talk about those things with your CPA and learn which one's better, because in some scenarios it's better to depreciate and in others it's better to write off, and it kind of depends on what you're working with, what kind of equipment you're working with. Ellen, do you know examples between the two? I don't, but of what might be better than the other?
Well, it just depends on the cash situation on your farm. What is your tax situation looking like? Do you need more expenses to offset having a really good year? The reason why depreciation exists is to try to even out your expense load, right? So if you were to take on a full expense, this is what happened to us: $100,000 wash pack shed, and we take it all in 1 year. Then that year is going to look like it's going to look bad, right? That's a lot of money to have out of the till. And so the idea of depreciation is to spread that $100,000 cost over many, many years. And that will sort of even out the financial picture and health of your business.
So as a strategy, you don't want to deduct that $100,000 out of your profit that 1 year and then turn around and go to FSA and say you want to borrow another $50,000 for a new storage shed because you just lost $80,000 last year and they're not going to lend it to you.
Right.
So it depends on what you're, it just depends on what you're trying to do next year. If you're going to go to FSA and try to get an operating loan, you want your P&L to be as positive and as big as possible.
Right.
So
now you might be able to explain your way out of that hole if you're working with somebody who really wants to talk to you.
Yeah. Do you all recommend ways to specialize in working with farmers, ranchers, or I haven't even thought about that.
The question is, do we or any of us have recommendations about whether it's worth finding a CPA or an accountant that knows something about ag? And I don't think it's absolutely necessary, but I think it is helpful because there are some weird things that are just happen on Schedule F, are not a normal suburban person's experience. But it's not massive, but there's probably, it would be great if you could. The other reason to work with an accountant that is farmer friendly, one, they probably are nicer. Two, if that accountant that you're working with is actually helping you set up your books and either they're doing the bookkeeping or they're helping you set up your books so that you can do the bookkeeping, I would be so happy for them to know about farms because it will help them set up the books in a way that makes sense to you instead of making sense to some other professional that isn't you. That would be the second reason. Anybody else have an example of doing some cost benefit analysis for anything in any context?
I was just debating if it was actually worth sharing or not because I wasn't a part of like the cost analysis of it, but I got to watch how a water wheel shaped the labor on a 10-acre farm I was working on. And like Robert said, the first day we used it, it took us 12 hours to plant 2 acres because we didn't know what the hell we were doing. And so we were just like fiddling with it all day. And there was like 5 of us and we had to go back and replant. There's like 2 of us on the water wheel, 1 on the tractor, 1 babysitting, and then 2 people replanting the ones that the water wheel messed up. But it was amazing. It was worth it. Like after we got better as the season went on, we were just like, oh, this is how long it should take. Like, yeah. It's not that long. But that's all.
Super. Yep, there's a learning curve. The more expensive the equipment, probably the higher the learning curve is my experience. Before I forget, I was going to say something in where we were the last minute ago. And that is this, we had examples of how the numbers actually got better as the practitioner got better with the equipment. Conversely, should you find that you don't like the thing that you bought, or it doesn't live up to its reputation, or somehow it doesn't fit on your farm, guess what? You sell it. And so it seems like something that growers forget is an option when they're thinking about buying something and they get all their panties in a twist about how much it's going to cost. And it's just like, oh, but what if it doesn't work the way I want? Oh, then sell it. If you sell it within a year, you're going to get really close to the price that you paid. And then it's done. These are photographs from my old farm. And this is the reason why a water wheel was invented is to plant through plastic mulch. So here is a shot of Becky and my niece Izzy planting tomatoes 18 inches apart, single wheel through black plastic mulch. It looks white because of the sun, but it's black plastic mulch. So this is the spring. Here's the view. What's nice about this particular model is that the driver can see what's happening because the tanks are split in half. The original models earlier on, this was solid and you couldn't see anything except like one hand way down here. And this makes it easier to see what's going on back there. Should you be going faster or slower? Is everything a big fat mess or what? Because sometimes it's hard to hear because, you know, this person is pretty far away from this person in distance, and plus there's an engine up here. Then what I wanted to show you is that this is the water wheel on bare ground. This is not what it was designed to do, but it does it anyway. Now you can see what the downside is. See how this wheel is collecting up mud, and eventually at the end of the row you're going to have to clean that all off before you, when you turn around and come back again. But here we are transplanting bare ground chard with the same machine. So let's talk about buying a water wheel. So I thought this was a little bit easier way of looking at how we're going to do the depreciation expense. So the bare bones was $26.50 from Rainflow in Pennsylvania. I'm going to say that it's useful for 10 years. I think that's generous. I mean, I think it would last longer for sure. The value, the math involved then brings this to $800. Oh, sorry. This is the salvage value at the end of the use. There would be something useful about it I could sell possibly. And so that gets us, we do all the math and we get down to here, $185 per year over that 10-year useful life. So instead of going right into the tool, this is just a screen, like a print screen capture. So there's those numbers that we just went over about depreciation and the cost over a course of a year. Then we're going to get into the nitty gritty. So again, having a water wheel transplanter does not automatically create more revenue for your farm. So again, we're not going to intersect with lines 1, 2, or 3. Here's this 185 coming right down on line 4. I'm not going to borrow money to pay for it. I'm going to pay it out of cash. And then we get into utilities. There's no utilities involved. Let's look at labor. Okay, so again, I use this spreadsheet kind of look at it because it's really big and easy for you to see everything. So here's the comparison between planting by hand, also known as on your hands and knees, versus sitting on the water wheel. And then the assumptions, this is all based on my own farm. The assumption is I'm going to be planting 32,000 plants a year. The labor rate is $13.50 an hour. And we're going to assume in this case that the plants are in 50s, okay, 50 plants per tray. And we are not including the cost of subsequent hand watering in the hand plant model. I'm not going to give a cost to it in this example, but it's something to think about. Okay, so the difference in rate, hand planting is 200 plants an hour per one human hour versus in a water wheel, I've got 3 people. So the crew is one person plants 200 by hand. In a water wheel, I've got 3 people involved. I got a tractor driver and 2 people riding, but the 3 of us can plant 1,000 plants an hour. So here's how many hours it's going to take to plant those 32,000 plants by hand. Here's how many hours the tractor is going to be driving, pulling that planter. So that's tractor hours, 32 tractor hours, but it's, remember there's 3 people. So then it's a 96 hours of humans transplanting the same number of plants. So you do the math. Here's our labor cost in dollars, $21.60 versus $12.96. But there's more to transplanting than just the planting. Okay, so here's what I'm calling support labor. So what does it cost? How much time do you spend walking back to the truck to get the next flat to plant, right? Well, it depends on how long your rows are. But I farmed on a farm that had long ass rows, like 200 was short, 450. Now that's a long patch. So there's quite a bit of time if you're by hand planting and you got to go back to the truck. You can only carry 2 at a time, you know, waitress style, waiter style, waitron style. In the water wheel, one of the beauties of the water wheel is it has all these racks. You're carrying your plants with you. And when you get to the end of the row and turn around, you put some more on. So there is no walking back and forth. So there's a difference there. 11 hours of walking back and forth versus 2 hours of loading and unloading flats at the end of the row. But there's also a cost associated, time associated with the tractor, futzing around with the tractor. Well, we got to hook it up. We got to get the wheels put on right. We got to fill it with water and blah, blah, blah. So I'm saying 2 hours, that might be a little too small, but there it is for now. So then we add all of this up and we get down to the bottom line, $2,300 to do it old school, $1,350 to do it new school. Okay, so I'm going to take those numbers, I'm going to plug them in to the labor sheet, and basically this is exactly what we just said. And here is the final savings, $959 of labor savings by using the water wheel transplanter. All right, so I'm going to take that $959, I'm going to plug it back in. Here it is right here, line 7, negative $959. But now I have to account for the tractor being used. So before it was just people in a pickup truck. Now we got people, pickup truck, and a tractor. And as I showed you in that scenario previously, there's 32 hours of tractor driving involved. And as I told you earlier as well, I'm going to assign the value, the cost of tractor usage at $20 an hour. So this is taking on a whole new expense that wasn't part of the old way of doing it by hand. So this is an expense of $640. So when you come down and you do the whole rest of the math, I'm only increasing my income, my net income, by $134 for a whole year of water wheel transplanting versus hand transplanting, including all the costs that we can consider as part of it. So each year that I own that equipment, I'm only paying off 5% of the cost of that water wheel. Said another way, it's going to take me 20 years to pay off that planter.
That doesn't look too great to me. It's going to take you twice as long to pay it off as you're estimating the economic value of it. You're only giving it a 10-year life.
Yeah. So so let's just jump right to here. What do you think about a payback of 20 years on a machine that will only last 10? Well, that just doesn't sound very good, does it? So that begs the question, which you should ask yourself every time, do I need to go back? Did I do this right? Or did I make the right assumptions? Is my data solid? And so just to be a pain in the ass, because I love that role in the world, as you can tell, I'm just going to say, yeah, our assumptions were awesome. Now, what do you think? Let's hear some other voices.
Can you go back to your assumption for a minute, the old way, and see those numbers?
This one?
Yes. You're saying that a person can transplant 200 plants an hour by himself or herself?
Yes.
I would challenge that.
You think that's too
do
high?
that many. I don't think you can do that many.
Okay, so I do have, obviously, I have this in the Excel formula, and we can go in there and mess around. But first I want to sell you, but I like what you're saying. What does anybody else think?
Frankie, I'm curious. You were talking about making assumptions. What's your assumption on this one, the old way?
I think Frankie is gone.
Oh, okay.
I don't see her name.
Let me ask you, Ellen, when you did the plants, did you stake them also or not?
Tomatoes?
Yes.
Yeah. If they were tomatoes, yeah.
So this 200 plants per hour, one person includes staking each plant also, right?
No, that's a whole other thing because staking isn't related to planting
Okay.
for us.
So me being a rookie, I'll just,
yeah.
could you not just hire, could you hire a couple more people and instead of spending the money on this, is this a way you would troubleshoot that? Or maybe you figure that up and then you compare the cost of just additional labor to using the tractor and buying the new equipment, and maybe it's worth it just to bring some more people on. If they can do 200 an hour or whatever it was you said.
Yep. I think that's a perfectly, with the numbers that we have, that seems like a reasonable option. I agree. So before we go into changing any more numbers, which we can if we have time, I'm going to sell you. I want to bring in a new topic. Are those numbers the whole story? Or is there more to the story than numbers? Okay, the hard to quantify in dollar bills, the idea of the water wheel. First option, first idea, health of the crew and you, meaning planting by hand is back-breaking and possibly knee-busting. If you're crawling on your hands and knees, if you're planting 3 rows of lettuce in a bed, you're not probably going to do it standing up. You're going to be scrabbling around on the floor. So it's tough on the crew, and sitting on that water wheel is a whole lot easier than not sitting on the water wheel. Second idea, desirability of the job. Robert brought that up when we talked about the carrot washer. Everyone likes to ride the water wheel. I have never had anybody say, no, thank you, I'd rather hoe. It's desirable. Now, here's something that we probably could put numbers around. If Marissa can figure out that it's going to cost $4 in electricity, we could put her on this and she would figure out how to quantify. But here's some issues I want you to know about the water wheel. The plants are watered immediately upon planting. That's the whole point. The water wheel is making a little mud hole, you're stuffing the plant in it, and it is watered right now. If you didn't come back and irrigate till tomorrow, your plants are still alive. Second piece, liquid fertility can be easily administered through the planter. So trust me, in those tanks, I am putting in the special sauce. I'm putting in mycorrhizal fungi, bacterial inoculants, fish and seaweed, EM. I mean, whatever I got, it's going in those tanks. I mean, what a way to send these babies right out into the world, right? With the loving care package of special sauce. All right, how would you do that by hand? It would be tough. Plants will have consistent spacing between the plants and between the rows. If you're on black plastic, doesn't make any difference, not really. But if you're going to use it on bare ground, now all of a sudden I have a transplanter and because those rows are going to be parallel, now I can run a set of cultivators through. Okay, so these are the things that in my universe make the numbers okay, because I'm going to get all of this and I'm not losing money, right? It wasn't that I'm going to lose money, it's that it's going to take a long time to pay it off. But if I add all of these things in, plus, I don't have one on the bottom, Robert, that says, I want one. Water wheel is a go for me. Now, here's one aspect that's sort of in Jeremiah's realm For some people, for a quite small farm, do you even have 3 people available on a regular basis to staff the working of the water wheel? That could be an issue. Okay, so those are some considerations. Here's some more. We use the water wheel to direct seed squash, cucumbers, pumpkins, winter squash into black plastic. You have got to tell me that you would much rather have your ass driven across that plastic where you're just dropping those little seeds right in, and you are not walking or crawling or crouching. It takes a while for 3 people to plant with the tractor compared to 12 people planting by hand, right? If you had 12 people and you could hit that job hard and everybody only had to work 1 hour, and because the thunderstorm is coming, you could always still have a hand plant emergency party if you need to. All right, so now what do you think of the payback of the 20 years on a machine that lasts for 10? Like I said, I'm all in. I'm sold. I love it. In another situation, if you weren't me, we have these other alternatives that can come to mind if the numbers don't look good or you can't afford the thing in the first place. Maybe there's a leasing option. Maybe you can pay somebody to come and do it. Maybe you could buy a used one, or maybe you could share one with somebody else, depending on what it is, right? If it's a root digger, that's a pretty easy thing, or undercutter, that's a really easy thing to transport to somebody else's farm in a truck. You could co-own it with somebody. And that would change the numbers dramatically, right? You'd be spending half as much money. So those are just some different ideas that come to my mind about the water wheel example. This is a pretty bad case scenario, not the worst. We could make it worse. What I'm just wanting you to get is how it could still be a good idea to do it.
Think about how many years it will take for an investment to pay off for itself. What seems like the longest time you'd consider reasonable? Do you want to discuss that a little, Ellen? See some people's reasoning, or just go on to the topic?
I'm open. Anybody have anything they want to share about that?
My theory of not having it be too long of a period is that your assumptions, the world changes too quickly. Technology changes too quickly. If you're waiting 10 years for something to, in a sense, pay itself off, you're in a whole different world than you were 10 years ago.
I was thinking about the investment of land, and if I had a farm for 15 years that I was profiting on versus like if I have a house that I have to pay on for 30 years or something. So I'm so new to all this. I don't think about all the different factors everybody else does, but that's kind of the angle I was coming at it from.
And I think that would kind of be a different analysis, right, Ellen? Like if you were looking at land, that would be a little bit different than equipment.
Yeah. Mostly because it's a totally different time scale, and also because generally speaking, it appreciates over time instead of becoming worth less. So far, that's held true in the United States. Okay, let's go to another spreadsheet. Okay, so last time we were together, we spent a ton of time in this bear. This is the crop costing tool. This was the carrot example. We worked through this pretty aggressively, and we thought about all kinds of different scenarios, and we played with the numbers. So anybody who wasn't here before, so sorry, we can't go over it again, but we are gonna have a tape of it at some point of this whole class. So at the bottom of this spreadsheet, there was a piece of what we learned in this example, is that growing carrots at the price and the yield that we were anticipating would get us a gross margin of 71%, which is super great. Since our gross margin goal was 40% in a retail setting, and that our cost to grow a pound of carrots in the scenario that we have above is, oops, I'm going to go over here, sorry, is 62 cents a pound, 66% gross margin, 62 cents a pound to grow them. Remember, this is just the cost to grow, harvest, and pack. It doesn't include infrastructure and overhead. So then at the bottom of this tool, there's a thing here called Opportunity Assessment Scenario. And we didn't mess with it because we had plenty on our plate. So today I want to mess with it. So I'm going to go back over here to an example. So what I've done, so the example is we're going to buy a root washer, the same one that we've been talking about with Michelle. It's a $4,000 investment. And in this case, we're going to borrow money for 2 years and we're going to pay 5% interest, which is kind of a lot these days. And so buying this tool, now we have to go back into the labor cost of growing carrots and put in this new information. How is this root washer going to save us money? So I'm going to go back up in the spreadsheet to this area. This is the labor description of everything we can think of that it takes to grow carrots. And the only thing that that barrel washer is going to do is change this line here, the root, the washing and packing. So I'm going to change this from, it was 240 minutes, and I'm going to change, it was 240 minutes to 60 minutes. So we're going to wash those 400 pounds in 1 hour. We're down to a cost to grow of 52 cents a pound, which is super cheap. But now I'm going to add in the cost of that root washer. The payment for that loan of $4,000 is $1,052 a year. And that's going to change our gross margin and bring it down to 42%. And it's going to bring our cost of growing carrots to $1.04 a pound. So it's still beating our goal gross margin, which was 40%, and it's still at 42%. And so it's still a winning crop for us. And we're going to have it paid off in 2 years. And after that, then our cost is going to be this, back to 52 cents a pound to grow carrots, which is pretty good price. So I just wanted to show you this piece here on the bottom of this worksheet in case you are, you've gotten involved in working any of these crop costing sheets. So that's what I have for this piece.
You got the finance purchase, $4,000 for 2 years. Where do you get that $1,052 per year? Are you paying it off in 4 years?
Oh, I did a mistake. No, what I meant to put in here, and I messed around with this so many times I didn't finish messing around. So let me put in here what I meant to say. Carrots are half of the roots washed.
Oh,
So I'm only going to make the carrots pay for half of the machine.
okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? Because at Michelle's house, they're also washing beets and they could be washing other things. They may even only be 25% of the roots that you're going to wash.
Right.
If you've got
Okay.
potatoes. Okay. Good one.
The total cost of the piece of equipment is $2,100. It's just carrots are only carrying half the load.
The total cost is $4,000 plus financing.
Right.
Yeah.
$2,100 a year.
For the carrots. Yep.
Right.
And we're not going to dive into any specific examples. We're going to do this, some other things to think about. Okay, so general considerations for working with any tool, any analysis tool. Watch the garbage in, garbage out, right? This is what Frankie was concerned about. She said, I don't think I'm going to have good numbers to work with to put into an analysis tool. Okay, I'm going to talk about that in a couple minutes, but it is definitely something to be wary of. Again, also there can be risks associated with different alternatives. There may be other investment alternatives that are better that should be looked at, that there would be a better use for that $4,000 than the root washer. Now, how are we going to know that? Well, you as the entrepreneur, as the business owner, you probably have a whole list of things, what I call the wish list of the things that you wish you had. And so that's why if you were really going to be methodical about where to put the next money for an investment, you would run an analysis on a number of different options that are on your wish list. You know, and sometimes I work with growers where mechanizing something to them is not a positive, that they don't want to spend time working, they don't want to sit on the tractor, or they don't want to spend time working with a machine that makes noise and where conversation is not possible. So it's, you know, that has to come into play, your temperament, your joy. So this is sort of general advice giving about this whole question of where to spend money. There are certainly are limits to what it is you're going to be able to buy. At least for most of us, don't have an endless budget. You only have a certain amount of cash. You only have a certain amount of cash that you could just go ahead and spend outright, or that you could put towards a payment on a piece of equipment. You have to understand how this new equipment is going to affect your operation. And so we use the cost benefit analysis to do a ranking. So here's a made up scenario. Let's say that for the following year, or for this year, I'm allowed, I've budgeted $8,000 towards capital improvements. That's what I would call it. So I've run a cost benefit analysis on these 4 items: a cultivator, a wash station improvement, a water wheel transplanter, there it is, the one that we did, and upping our game in computers, maybe buying a new laptop, or buying a bunch of iPads that are going to be in the wash pack house and other areas for data collection. So I ran those numbers. This is how much it's going to cost to buy, to buy each one of those items. But this was the return on investment. This is how quickly the thing pays for itself. And so what I did is I put another category here called, all right, well, if I rank all the things, oh, there's Frankie coming back. If I rank them by how quickly they return, not how much I love them and want them, and I just start spending money, what can I get for $8,000? Well, it looks to me like if I bought these first 2 items on the list, this is the running total, I'd be at $7,500. I'd get a new wash station and a new cultivator, and the water wheel didn't get in. It's gonna have to be later, or I'm gonna have to come up with some more money. So this is the perfect world scenario of you knowing in advance all the things that you wish for, having the wherewithal and the willpower and the time to run an analysis on each one of them, and then to rank them like this. Now, what's not in here, again, are the want. Where's the want? And where are some of those intangible factors? So obviously, you're going to do whatever you want because you're the boss. But this is a very organized and methodical way to go through your list. You know, you can always do something. You've always got reasons to do whatever it is you want, but it's good to know what the data shows and then make your decision from there. Capital purchases. All right, so this is a way of thinking about your farm business and coming up with these ideas and judging whether those are good ideas of things you should get. One good idea is to identify the bottlenecks on your farm, places where you're spending a ton of money on labor. Those are often smart places to look for making improvements. Buy bigger than you think you need. Unless you are quite sure that your business you're happy with the scale of your business, the size of your business, then buy what fits your scale. Most people are getting bigger. Most people, not everybody, but most people are getting bigger. And so buying some excess capacity while you're going through the trouble of buying can be a smart move, particularly regarding coolers. There is not a one farmer in the United States of America who says, my cooler's too big. I wish I bought a smaller one. I have never once heard those words uttered. Buying tractors. There's almost no farmers that say, I got too big of a tractor. There's mostly farmers saying the tractor is too small and can't pull the loads that I want. Once you get past a certain size tractor, they actually are not very much more expensive for a lot more power because they're less desirable, right? Anything that's in kind of the homeowner, farmette size range for tractors, they're really expensive and they retain value really well. So like 24 to 50 horsepower tractors, they just stay worth a ton of money even when they're really used. You get
Ellen, can I make a comment?
Yeah.
I just want us to make sure that everybody in their mind is not thinking of, when we say getting bigger, we don't mean necessarily buying more land. We mean more production. It could be becoming more efficient at producing on the land that you have, not necessarily buying more land, because buying more land is an incredibly expensive way to step up and get bigger.
Right.
If you can double crop or triple crop, or if you can be, get better where, again, your percentage culls are getting smaller and smaller until all of a sudden you sell everything you harvest. That's the way you get bigger without having to buy a bigger farm.
Good point. I like that. Thank you. This is something that I do get asked fairly regularly by newcomers, and that is, am I ever done buying things for the farm, making improvements? And the answer is no. The answer is no. You're never done. Now, never's a long time. There is a possibility, but as I say that, let's just fantasize that you're 20 years down the road. You're at the scale that you enjoy and that's working for you and your family and your profits. Well, over the course of 20 years, some of your stuff is rotten, rusted, and busted. If you do last a long time, you're not buying new equipment to add to your corral. You're replacing things. You're replacing roofs on buildings. You're replacing implements that are busted. You're buying a newer tractor with less repair costs. So I would say you're never done, basically. And what is a reasonable amount of money to consider spending? And the answer is, and this is not for a startup, right? Brand new farms are just bleeding cash because you got nothing. You're starting with nothing and you need to buy one of everything to get started. So the first couple, 3 years, you're just, you're spending every dime you can get your hands on and foregoing pay and foregoing all kinds of things to capitalize that operation. But once you kind of get into your stride, I would say that 10% of gross is a really reasonable and kind of smart number to be spending on replacing infrastructure or equipment, making upgrades, and bringing it or buying new tools altogether, new to the whole, stable of equipment that you have.
I think it's an important thought to, make sure that you're systematically setting some money aside so you can, the whole essence of what we're talking about here is mechanizing. A lot of people don't like that term, but I think we got to be real comfortable with that's what we're doing. We're talking about being able to get more production, more, pounds per acre or dollars per acre or something per acre out of your farm. Now, we're going to be assuming that you're farming it correctly, organically, sustainably, et cetera. But as you become a better farmer, you're going to be able to do that. And I think the only way you are, able to kind of match up your increased ability, you're getting smarter and being a better farmer with being able to mechanize is to have that money set aside. There's going to be new pieces of equipment coming out. You may not always have the first round of technology. You may get the second round of technology, and you just have to be comfortable with, maybe some farmers down the road have this really fancy planter and you only got a planter from 5 years ago, but it's really helped you mechanize your farm. But you can't do it unless you have that money set aside. And and also having it set aside is another way to prove to FSA or Farm Credit or whoever it is that's going to be helping you finance your farm that you're really paying attention.
And in a risk assessment scenario, let's say you set aside some money to make an improvement and something horrible happens. We could also call that could throw into the rainy day fund. Something really, there was supremely bad weather. I lost a high tunnel. There's your safety net. And then, that year, instead of buying the new finger weeder that you were dreaming about, you're going to replace the high tunnel instead. You're going to put a new skin on it, new ends and whatever. So I think that's a really good way to think about it, Robert. Research. Okay. So this is what Frankie was saying, and that is, how am I supposed to know how this new thing is going to change my farm? In terms of numbers, how am I going to put numbers on it? The fact that there's something you want means you've seen it. You've seen it somewhere. You've seen it on somebody's farm. You've seen it on YouTube, whatever it is. This is the information age, y'all. And people are perfectly happy to share all kinds of information through all the different platforms that most of us frequent. So of course, the best and the most amazing is to actually visit another farm or talk to another farmer directly to ask all your questions. So this here is not just only about one specific piece of equipment. It's kind of like, well, what's your farm like? What do you grow? How many acres? How many animals? What are your buildings? Who do you hire? And then ask them, what kinds of equipment do you use and what did it cost? Instead of getting distracted by walking down the row of 15 implements, say, what's the one you wish you got 10 years ago or 5 years ago? Those are really good questions that'll get you right to the point. Other things you can ask if this person is allowing you to grill them. Here are some kind of cool metrics, like how much greenhouse space do you have compared to cropping space? This is full-time equivalent. How many hours of labor per acre does it take to run your farm? What's the herd size or flock size compared to the acreage of pasture? This is always my favorite one. What's labor as a percent of gross? This is a huge indicator of what's going on that farm, whether it's things are going well financially or whether it's kind of a struggle. Cubic feet of cold storage per acre of vegetables. So these are metrics that you could then apply to your situation, your acreage. So that was the big question. Does it pay? So these are some toys that I've had in years past. This was the beginning of our wash pack house. This is one of my favorite tractors to spend many hours sitting on. I loved buying this at an auction for $2,500 to plant all my cover crop seeds. And then of course the beloved water wheel transplanter. So do some analysis to help you figure out if it pays.
Okay, last polling question. If you purchase new equipment, the following will you also have to put into place? And you can check more than one. So Ellen, I'm curious, with the with using that tool, all of these things here could potentially be put into the cost that you're putting in the tool.
Right, in that other, in those lines that say other.
So thinking about the hours for the employee training on it and all of that when you're starting out is important as well.
Insurance policy adjustments, that's a really good point to bring up. Remember that nothing is covered unless it's listed. And anybody, what else does anybody have? Were they thinking when they clicked other? Two people.
I was just saying to make sure we have a spot for the equipment on the farm, especially if it's brand new. Like we're getting a BCS, and I was like, well, that's going to need to be in the barn, so we're going to need to take some time to make space for it to be able to take care of it.
Yeah. So I have one more example because I thought we might have extra time. Undercutter. Here we go. Okay, so I put a picture at the bottom of this undercutter. It's super low key, you know, there's no moving parts. There's no PTO. There's not even a grease fitting, for God's sake. It's just a freaking metal bar to drag underneath and make it so all the roots are, you just pop them right out. Okay, so that's the example. The cost, and I didn't double check this, reality check this. I'm just taking these numbers straight from John Hendrickson up in University of Wisconsin. So total cost of the equipment is $640. You know, so how hard is it to figure out if you want to spend $640? I don't know, but maybe it's hard. What's the resale value or the salvage value? 140. How long will it last? 10 years. That gets us to this number, $50 a year depreciation cost. Let's get into the scenario, okay? And I put in my own influence here. Okay, here's an example where I'm going to say this. There will be additional revenue by using this equipment because I'm going to have less damaged roots from hand digging, right? So I'm going to say that in this scenario, I'm going to have an additional revenue of $300 worth of product that would normally I would have either left in the field undiscovered, or it would have become damaged. Then I'm going to multiply that additional revenue by my gross margin of 40%, which again is a healthy, sustainable gross margin number for a basically retail operation. That gets us to $120 that we actually get to call profit or to have towards some of our other expenses. There's our $50 depreciation is right there. Now let's go into talking about how this tool is going to change our lives beyond not damaging the vegetables. So there is no utility cost. Let's go to the labor sheet. Here's the comparison. Digging carrots by hand versus the undercutter. So in this example, we're growing 2,000 pounds of carrots. So it's not a big deal. It's not a big patch. The work rate in the old school method is 90 pounds per hour. In the new method, it's 160 pounds per hour. So it's not double, but it's significantly faster. This is still just one person's effort. So this is totaling up the hours. Here's our labor rate in this case is $13 an hour. Now we haven't talked about how the cost of labor would affect these calculations, right? If you have perfectly delightful labor for $9 an hour, then equipment is going to change your life less, going to change the bottom line less, right? Does that make sense? So the bottom line is $118 net labor savings. So we did have to add this line here, 1 hour of extra support. So this is hooking and unhooking the equipment. And that's pretty generous timing. Okay, so there's net labor savings of $118. We go back to our sucker over here, and here it is, negative 118. Now we have just added a tractor to the situation. So I'm going to say we are going to dig those 2,000 pounds in 2 hours. We're going to undercut them in 2 hours. Do you know what I'm saying? You're undercutting, you can undercut the beds just fast. And then you still come back by hand and pull them out and top them or whatever. But the actual amount of time the tractor is going to be there, I'm estimating at 2 hours at $20 an hour. So there's a new cost coming into this scenario of $40. So you work it all out, we get to a net income increase in income of $148. The piece of equipment is quite inexpensive, and so in 1 year we'll pay off a quarter of it, also known as it takes 4 years to pay it off. Anybody want to share anything about this?
I think with a lot of the tractor implement stuff, it's just a lot harder to get there because it means usually buying a bigger tractor than the one that we have. So all these sound awesome, but we can't put a mulch layer on the size tractor we have. And even those undercutters need like a certain amount of weight on the tractor to get them to do it correctly, right?
Yep. Well, you need to be able to pull it. You can always put front weights on if it's just a balance issue. So yeah, that's a great point. Like we don't have the tractor capacity. So then the cost analysis tool for you is a bigger tractor.
Well, Ellen, is that the end
That's
of
it.
to share? Okay. Well, thank you again. That was so awesome. And we do have recordings of all 3 of these webinars. Webinar series was a collaboration between the Sustainable Food Center and Food Shed Investors and the National Center for Appropriate Technology and Plant to Profit. The assistance is not ending here. We have an announcement to make just about other technical assistance that we're going to be offering to farmers. So I'm going to turn it over to Hallie from Sustainable Food Center.
Yeah, thank you so much, Karen. Thank you so much, Ellen, for this awesome webinar with incredible information. This webinar series is a part of a larger project that we're all working on, NCAT, Food Shed Investors, and Sustainable Food Center, which is who I am with, focused on getting farmers who are interested in wholesaling up to that level and helping them grow in whatever ways it is that they're interested in growing. And so we will have technical assistance, both from financial side of things with Food Shed Investors and from the technical side of things with NCAT. And Sustainable Food Center is working with a couple of buyers to continue this work.
So Hallie, are you guys helping folks with bookkeeping stuff, with helping them set up their accounting systems so that they can do a little more careful financial analysis?
Yeah, Food Shed Investors is definitely going to be tackling bookkeeping, record keeping, the whole financial spectrum of things.
Cool.
Their assistance is really going to be one-on-one. So it's going to be whatever ails you will be able to be discussed and addressed with these experts.
And what's the time frame of your program?
This project is going for about until next June, but that doesn't mean that the work's going to conclude there. All 3 of these organizations, this is what we do. So this work will continue on.
That is so cool. Oh my gosh. That is an amazing opportunity for you guys. And I don't know, maybe your heads are not in the books, but if you can take advantage of a smart, free person to individually look at your farm and the way you're keeping your books, whatever it is, oh my gosh, you better jump on it.
we do have the opportunity, if you know of any other farmers who are interested in getting involved with a project like this, we totally have the ability to bring more folks on, since we have the recordings of the webinars, and we have all of the tools that Ellen discussed throughout particularly the last 2 webinars. If we have anyone who's interested in getting involved after the webinars, just send them my way, and we can get them looped in and involved.
And do you want to give a brief description of your book?
Oh, sure. It's called Start Your Farm. And obviously, some of you have already done that. It's not a technical book. It doesn't teach you how to grow anything. It's not about growing. It's about how to think about your farm as an organism, and how your farm can integrate or not with your life and with your kids, and how to think about markets from kind of a broader perspective. So it's kind of a philosophical and kind of overarching, or what's underneath, instead of, it's not about what paper pot, what kind of transplanter to use. And I wrote half of it, and my co-writer is Forrest Pritchard, who one is a man, which is balancing, and he's a livestock guy. So it's not just for veggie folks, it's for anybody. We really don't get into specific enterprises. So it's hopefully a little bit funny. It's written by 2 actual regular farmers. We use pretty approachable language. It's a little bit silly. And it hopefully will bring something of value to you, even if you've already begun your journey in the farm world.
Robert and I are definitely available for any technical assistance y'all need. So I think most of y'all have both of our emails. They've been on the emails that we've been sending out to y'all. So please do not hesitate to be in touch, and we will do what we can to get you the information you need. Again, thanks, Ellen.
You're welcome.
It's been so fun working with you.
My pleasure.